Joaquín, Christos Anesti.
Αληθώς Ανέστη.
Christos Anesti.
Αληθώς Ανέστη.
Christos Anesti.
Αληθώς Ανέστη.
Es bautizado en el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Amén.
The Orthodox Church in Guatemala with the Mayan Indians started as a result of a social movement for land reform, which led eventually to many of those same people and many of those villages to enter into the Orthodox Church.
It was really Father Andrέas that started the movement. He was thrown out of the Catholic Church. He had advocated for the Mayans during the Civil War, and he was on the wrong side of that. The government was not too pleased with it. The Catholic Church at the time had not done well by the Mayan people.
Father Andrés was a very compassionate man, and it hurt him when he saw suffering of any kind.
He started little by little organizing the people in the parishes to take care of themselves and to seek out land. He would speak out on behalf of the rights of the Mayan people. And as a result of that, he was able to acquire land from the government, which the poor people could then go and develop and build their villages on. He built 44 villages himself with this funding that he had. Because of his espousal of their rights to have land, they developed a great affection and devotion and admiration to him. In the Mayan villages, decisions are taken by the elders. So the leaders of the communities consult with each other and they decide where they want to associate themselves in terms of their faith. Since they were, for the most part, marginalized and or thrown out of the Catholic Church, they approached Father Andrés, and he told them the sacraments don't belong to any man, they belong to God, and I will give you sacraments when you come to me. So because of his approach and his openness to them, one by one villages began to enter the Orthodox Church.
Now that Father Andrés has passed away, he's left a tremendous legacy. He's planted many seeds that are bearing fruit now. And we're there to follow in his footsteps and to carry on his work and to be his disciples in the future.
We have to realize that it's a world so different from the world in which we live. They have very few distractions.
The daily life of a typical Mayan community is very primitive. It's harsh and challenging.
They're all up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. They go out to the fields, the fires start, the women cook the breakfast. It's a very, very difficult life. Even kids from 6th grade on are working in the fields.
Their life is one of hardship. Their life is one of poverty, many times of sicknesses that are not easily cured. But nevertheless, despite all of these difficulties, when we walk into a village as representatives of Christ in the church, are received with a tremendous amount of joy.
If you walk down the street and people approach you who've probably never seen you before, they'll come up and shake your hand and give you a hug. That's the kind of people they are.
I look up and I see people carrying loads of wood on their back and suffering, and yet they turn around and they're smiling and they're waving and being cheerful. It humbles me to see that in their suffering they're still very joyful, happy to be alive.
Feeling the warmth, feeling the love, experiencing the joy shows you that even though they're deprived of most everything that we would have, they have this strong bond amongst themselves and this strong love of Christ, a very strong love of Christ.
They love Christ, they love the church, Every day there are people filling the church, praying, singing. On Sundays they're there at least an hour, if not more, before the liturgy begins, singing, praying, and waiting anxiously for the liturgy to start.
In the Orthodox Church, we don't minister only to the spiritual side of life, but we also minister to the whole person. So if a person is hungry, it's hard to teach Christ to them without first giving them something to eat. If a person is physically ill, it's hard to talk to them about having faith in God if you're not helping them in some way to meet their medical needs as well. So in the villages that we have been going to, we've been finding that there's a tremendous lack of medical care given to them.
It was always Father Andrés' dream to take care of the physical needs as well as the spiritual needs of his people. Of course, it hurt him deeply to see them dying of things that were preventable, and he knew that if he could build a clinic in these remote areas, that it would help hundreds, if not thousands of people to have a better life and to stay alive.
First order of business was choosing a village, which Agokati was a good village because there was a partial building there already. We had a very dynamic priest in the village that could rally the people. We knew that the villagers wanted this very badly and they were willing to work hard to make it happen. In our very first trip to the village elders said, we want to build it, we want to run it, we want it to be ours. That's why we chose that village, because that's what they wanted and that's what we want to do.
The people have a very strict code of ethics by which they live amongst themselves. And if someone has a problem, if a house it needs to be rebuilt, the villagers come together and then they will help out the neighbors. So the communal feeling is very strong.
One of the things that they're not afraid of is hard work. We took the plans and we said, what we have to do is take the second floor off of the storage building in the back. When I woke up the next morning, I saw the men coming out of the hills. They swarmed this building. It was unbelievable to see the top of the building disappeared in about 4 hours with all of these men taking this building apart. And they were hauling it away. And I said, where is the building going? Are they just going to throw it out in the dump? They said, oh no, they're building another building with the materials they took off the top of this one down the street. So in one day, they took the top off of one building, built a second building, and were ready to construct the clinic with the whole village helping. That's what this village is all about.
Aguacate is 20 minutes from the border of Mexico, but there are no hospitals nearby and there are no clinics nearby. There's just a health post, but it's pretty much abandoned. A nurse comes that's sent by the government maybe once a month and she might give some injections, and that's it. There is within the village a healthcare worker who's had a minimal amount of training. She's a 19-year-old girl, her name is Juana. So if you get sick in Aguacate, or if you need a tooth extracted, or if you need a wound stitched up, or if you need your blood pressure taken, or if you need a pill or an antibiotic, you have to go see Juana. You know, there's no emergency treatment whatsoever available nearby.
Other than that, there's virtually no care. If they need anything more than that, they have to go to Mexico, which is 2 hours away by bus, if they have the bus fare to go there. And if they go there, they have to pay up front for an evaluation, and then if they need medicine, testing, anything, they have to pay for that as they go. If they can't pay, they're turned away.
We discovered this tremendous need within the community and a lot of problems.
The health is about as bad as I've seen in any third world country.
Respiratory problems are very big because the people cook over wood fire stoves, and so the smoke is always filling their homes. The children from a very young age are inhaling the smoke, the women who are doing the cooking, so you see a lot of asthma.
Problems of prenatal care. There are 30 babies born every month in this village.
There are midwives in the village for birthing. They are all elderly. They make mistakes. There are young women who die giving childbirth. When we first went there, they didn't even have rubber gloves. They were washing the rubber gloves in between births.
So we met with the midwives to find out what they need and how we could help them. We brought some kits for them to look at, where they could improve the manner in which they delivered the children. And we had a wonderful sharing experience with them. They asked us for a scale to weigh the babies. We're going to bring them some latex gloves, a plastic sheet that they can put on the bed so they don't mess up the bed when they're delivering the baby, clamps to clamp the umbilical cord, things of that nature that they could have. The water within the village is often contaminated. We discovered in the one village that they had E. coli at the source. We also saw that there was a lot of cancer, intestinal problems with worms because of the food that they were eating, problems with blood pressure, maternal problems with the hemorrhaging of women.
A couple just passed away with tuberculosis and left 7 children. They're now being raised by a 13-year-old. While we were there last time, we diagnosed a girl with tuberculosis. There was another one with a very bad infection in her finger, which would have been septic if it hadn't been cared for. Dental disease is epidemic in the village. 8-year-old children, their teeth are rotted down to their gums. There was no fluoride, no toothbrushes, no toothpaste.
We started a program to help the children with fluoride treatment, a wash where they gargle with material and they swish it in their mouth and then they spit it out and it'll give them once a week fluoride treatment.
The first time we went there, the dentist that was with me pulled 150 teeth, and that's all we can do right now. And the clinic is there. Hopefully we'll be able to do some restorative work.
So these are the phases in which we are currently working on that end. We're also bringing in medical equipment, so that when the doctors come, they will also be able to treat the people. Many doctors have contacted me, dentists, nurses, people with administrative skills in running a clinic.
We could also use people who have agricultural knowledge to help the people plant better crops, to combat the diseases that attack the crops.
So the idea here is that we're going to be working with volunteers to help come down and offer clinics and outreach through this particular area, which will be a center for many villages in the area that have no access to medical care.
We consider this the prototype project, and we're developing how to do it. We've done a lot of things so far that have worked and that haven't worked, and we're recording the things that do work. We have a database being developed that's going to keep track of the treatment and the successes and things that we need to do better. So we'll take all of that and move to the next area. There's worse areas than Aguacate. There are areas that suffer much more than Aguacate, and this is really bad in Aguacate.
We will do everything we can to help bring medical aid and nutritional assistance.
This is going to be a very fast-growing church.
I see the church growing because there are many, many children being born every year and brought into the church, and so I think the church will gain in not only in population but in strength and in knowledge as the people become more accustomed and more knowledgeable about the faith.
My prayer is that they'll finally have the peace they probably once had when they were a vibrant community. They're very smart people, very intelligent people. They've just been beaten down for so many years.
I think through the church, the people's lives will improve and their children's lives will improve. And I've found in my experience that just as poverty and abuse can become generational, also assistance can be generational. When you help someone, their children's lives get better and their children's lives get better, and it goes on for generations. So helping one person might seem like a small thing, but it's generational. It goes on into the future. The best way that we in the United States can help our Mayan brothers and sisters is through financial aid.
I had come back from one of these trips, and I had heard about people dying, I'd seen people injured. It was pretty awful. And I was in a doctor's office 2 days later, waiting in an air-conditioned office with a bunch of other people, and the nurse came out and said, "I'm sorry, but the doctors are delayed and we're going to have a delay of about an hour." And you would have thought a stink bomb blew in the office because everybody was in an uproar. What kind of an office is this? Blah, blah, blah. It's going to be an hour delay and so on. And I just come back from the village, so my temper went up. And I stood up and I gave them all a lecture about how lucky they were in an air-conditioned office, reading magazines, their insurance is going to cover it. I said, I just came from a village where people are dying. Walked days just for the chance to see a doctor. And some lady rushed behind me. She apologized to me. She says, "I'm sorry." She says, "Is there anything I can do?" I said, yeah, there's something that you can do. Let me ask you a question. I said, you go out to dinner very often? And she said, yeah, I do. How many times a week? She said, a couple times a week. Well, how much do you spend? And she says, well, anywhere from, depending on where we go, $100, $150. I said, well, here's what you can do. Don't go out to dinner next week and mail a check to the Holy Cross Mission Fund. That's what you can do. It's easy. She said, gee, that is kind of easy, isn't it? It is easy. That's what we need. If people in this country count their blessings, all they need to do is make a tiny sacrifice, like don't go out to dinner this week. Give that money, you can save lives with the money that you would have paid a restaurant to go out to dinner, or a ball game, or a football game, or anything else. It's really easy.